Thank you for staying with us. It's time now to take a look at stories making headlines on the front page of Nigerian newspapers. And I begin with the Nation newspaper. The major story here says, Army explains accidental drone attack on villagers. Army explains accidental drone attack on villagers. The Defense Headquarters intelligence show terrorists movement. And another writer here, our family lost 34 people. Nema, 85 killed, 66 injured. Tinubu sympathizes, others probe of incident. We recall this incident happened on Sunday where the villagers were observing the Mulud celebration, and there was an airstrike carried out by the army where 85 persons were said to have been killed and 66 injured. The 66 are receiving treatment in the hospital. To another story now, Uzodinma Supreme Court slams 40 million naira cost on Ozakhome. Apex Court frowns at frivolous motion by Ihedioha. This is still talking about the controversial 2019 election that brought Hope Uzodinma into power. All right, another story here. Budget 2024, federal government targets concessionary loans, climate financing. Budget 2024, federal government targets concessionary loans, climate financing. Another story here, CBN blames cash crunch on uneven flow, huge withdrawals. CBN blames cash crunch on uneven flow, huge withdrawals. And Japa syndrome, a Nigerian kills wife in UK over bills. You find all the details of the story on the front page of the Nation newspaper. To this Nigerian newspaper now, the major story here says, Tinubu orders probe of Kaduna drone attack as death toll hits 85, 66 villagers injured. NEMA confirms. State officials visit devastated community. Army chief apologizes, donates 10 million naira for treatment of victims, says terrorists embedded with civilians in affected community. And 2024 budget, Nigeria targeting 1 trillion naira climate change financing privatization, says Edo. Federal government revoked unused oil exploration licenses granted some fueling stations there. Some of the stories you find on the front page of this Nigerian newspaper. To the leadership newspaper now, the major story is still talking about Kaduna bombing. Tinubu, Northern governors, others demand probe. Military apologizes, says terrorists disguised as civilians to evade attacks. Requests notice of public gathering from residents. And the pictures there depicting the victims, some in hospitals and their families. The chief of army staff there, Lieutenant General Taurid Lagbaja, and the burial, there was a burial, and others were praying for victims of the drone attack at Tundumbiri village. Another story, ASU laments exodus of lecturers from public universities. Some of the stories you find on the front page of the leadership newspaper. To the blueprint now, Tundumbiri bombing, NGF, JNI, ACF, NEF. These are some of some socio-cultural groups of the North, Northern Governors Forum, Arewa Consultative Forum, Northern Elders Forum. Some of them demand investigation, justice, compensation. Army's mistake remark not acceptable. Group terrorists embedded with civilians will guard against reoccurrence. The Defense Headquarters Chief of Army Staff is saying, and the picture also depicting victims there as well. All right, we'll move quickly now to the paper, the Punch newspaper rather, and it's still talking about the Kaduna village bombing, the major story there. Death toll hits 120, villagers alleged military bombed twice. One family loses 32 members. Culprits must be punished. Survivors, ACF, JNI tell military. Army chief begs victims, says soldiers mistook villagers for bandits. Tinubu Atiku mourn. Another picture there depicting the victims, those in the hospital receiving treatment, a majority of them children. And this story at the downstrip, Kabal running Akeredolu's government stealing funds. That's what the PDP is saying. You want to know more or read more some of the stories on the front page of the Punch newspaper? You can pick that up. To the Daily Trust now. The major story here, Kaduna massacre, northern leaders, others demand compensation. Residents narrate ordeal. Tinubu orders probe. We were pursuing terrorists. That's what the military is saying. Your statement insensitive, Shehu Sani. Sanusi Bamali, others call for calm attack product of recklessness, and Amnesty International has said. And these are some of the stories you find on the front page of the Daily Trust. Ibraheem.
Right. The first with me here is the Nigerian Tribune, and with the screaming headline, survivors recount details of Kaduna tragic drone attack. And the writers read, Tinubu, ACF, NEF, JNI call for probe. How unwanted tragedy occurred, as according to the director, the DHQ. And Lagbaja visits village, regrets incident, 85 killed, 66 injured, as according to NEMA. Above the nameplate, Makinde presents 433.2 billion naira budget, prioritizes education, health. Mba presents 521 billion naira budget, education gets 33%. Renewed hope agenda, my priority in police affairs ministry. That's according to Suleiman Ibraheem. You read that up on page 13. And then customs seize 9 trailer loads of rice, others in Ogun. Supreme Court fines Ozekome 40 million naira, declines application to sack Uzodinma. Air Force puts up presidential aircraft for sale. You can see that on page 5 if you'd like to bid for it. NATO report. There's the first news is the next. NATO report. Reps issue arrest warrant on Kyari Cardoso, Accountant General, 17 others for shunning 4 earlier invitations. Order IGP to bring affected CEOs before committee by December the 14th. U.S. group extols Dixon, says it remains Panijo leader. U.S. group extols Dixon, says it remains Panijo leader, as High Chief Jeremiah declares plots to smear him as dead on arrival. 2027 polls. 25 new political parties apply to INEC for registration. Army drone strike in Kaduna deeply regrettable. That's according to President Tinubu. Reps vow to recover national assets acquired through fraud. Comments on Tinubu. A Papa-led Labour Party faction tackles Peter Obi. Army Chief Lagbaja attends burial of Army drone strike victims. And then Tinubu returns to Abuja from COP28 in Dubai. I lost 34 family members to Kaduna bombing. That's a resident. Supreme Court fines Ozekome 40 million naira for filing frivolous suit seeking Uzodima's sack. And you can see that. You can see the picture of the chief of army staff, Lieutenant General Tarid Lagbaja, at the burial of the victims of Sunday's army drone strike in Todunbiri village in Kaduna on Tuesday. On the front page of the first news. Next is the Nature newspaper. COP28, NNPC boss, Kyari advocates a just energy transition for Africa. You can read that on page 3. And then CNG buses begin operations at Mowe, Ibafo, Berger. That's on page 5. Team leader commends Fintiri's support to a Cressol project in Adamawa. And then COP28, Nemo Buses stresses the imperative for collective action on climate change. You can read that on page 5. And Lagos plans waste conversion project secures funding at COP28. That's on page 6. COP28, 400 delegates sponsored by Nigeria. Too small, Senator Jimo Ibraheem. And environmentalists unite for Africa's just transition to renewable energy at COP28. That you can read up on page 23 of the Nature newspaper. Nigerian News Direct is next. Foreign divestments, IOCs, indigenous companies decry multiple taxation bottlenecks in petroleum industry. Lord NCDMB for effective local content implementation. Minister identifies divestments by foreign companies as opportunity for developing in-country capacity. Above the nameplate, Lagos to open Okpebi Mendel Jota Link Bridge in second quarter of 2024. $852 million operators debt. Senate issues 48-hour ultimatum to NPA. Federal government seeks $1.5 billion funding to lay 95,000 kilometers of fiber optic cables. Customs intercepts 18,100 liters PMS, 9 trailer loads of foreign rice, others worth 872 million naira. Wabote harps on prioritizing local content as national agenda to sustain growth. Business Day is next, the penultimate newspaper here. Inside multi-billion naira Esther Code racketeering. Patients reel over 1,390 antibiotics price jump. Patients reel over 1,390,000 antibiotics price jump. And haulage cost spike spoils Christmas for shoppers. You can read that up on the front page of the Business Day newspaper. Last but not least is the Daily Independent. Nigerian Airlines laments $60 million loss to bird strikes annually. Carriers suffer 60 bird strikes in 10 months in 2023. Ask federal government to reduce costs of bird damages with modern technologies. Mass resignations hit public universities. ASU cries out. And Senate to withhold budgetary approval to recalcitrant government agencies. NASU mounts pressure on Tinubu to review minimum wage, says it's ridiculous, earning 30,000 naira, buying fuel at 640 naira per litre. You can read that up on page 7. And then next is the Supreme Court dismisses Ihedio's suit seeking to sack Uzodinma. That's on page 6. Federal government states borrowing 11 trillion naira pension funds at low interest rate, as according to Shomale. And reps summon DSS, NCOS, EFCC over attempts to rearrest Emefiele. Federal government okays sale of presidential aircraft as NAF calls for bidders. Tinubu orders investigation after Army airstrike kills over 85. Then Army chief visits bombed village, apologizes, donates 10 million naira. Federal government to compensate Kaduna airstrike victims. I lost 34 family members to Kaduna bombing. That's according to Villager. And the last on the bottom strip is Governor Umba presents 521.6 billion naira 2024 budget to State Assembly. You can read that up on page 27 of the Daily Independent newspaper. And that's all we have for you for the newspapers this morning.
Right. To get more details, you can just pick any of the papers. This for today. All right. We need to quickly move now. There's so much to talk about, especially with regards to the incident in Kaduna. And the federal government demands accountability for Kaduna killings. Join us after the break for this conversation. Stay with us.